March 1962, a 22-year-old student journalist and activist named Tom Hayden sat down in his Manhattan apartment to begin work on what can be called the agenda for a generation that would distill the fears and hopes of the student movement. Hayden, who went on to serve 18 years in the California Senate, is a writer, teacher, and activist. He was a freedom rider in the Deep South and helped create a national Poor People's Campaign for jobs and empowerment in the early 60s. He helped lead the anti-Vietnam War movement. In 1982, he was elected to the California State Assembly. We're joined today with Tom Hayden, one of the founders of SDS, to talk about innocence, experience, and the Port Huron Statement at 50. Tom Hayden, welcome back.
It's an honor to be here. Good morning.
So Tom, when did the Student Democratic Society begin?
Students for a Democratic Society was formed in 1960 as a youth group of the Social Democratic League for Industrial Democracy.
Tell me the goals of the Student Democratic Society.
Well, we seek more justice making, equality, peace, and freedom in our society. Together we want to affirm that another world is possible, a world beyond oppression, war, and empire, a world where people have power over their own lives. We really believe we can create a more just society. We're opposed to injustice anywhere, in the classroom, in our country, everywhere. We are committed particularly to racial equality, jobs, civil liberties, and liberal education. We can and will work to eliminate injustice and build societies where power is accessible to all.
So who supported the student movement?
Well, all the students were for this movement. They wanted equality, peace, and would do anything for this to happen through nonviolent protests. On the other hand, police guards and state troopers were against this and would do whatever they have to stop this, even if it involves shooting students. Police had not supported this because they were against their rules.
Tell me about what happened at Port Huron in Michigan.
Well, in 1962, the key members, we all met at Port Huron, Michigan, to draft a statement of who they were and what they expressed. They worked on a document that expressed their discontent with the current policies and structure of the country. And me, myself, now a California senator, I wrote out a draft and called it the Port Huron Statement.
What were the accomplishments of the student movement?
The student movement created a generation of people who believed in social change, and most of them kept on working towards their social goals. Although the student movement of the 60s didn't end the war, they didn't just sit by and watch it happen either. They proved that young people have a mind, a voice, and that they are prepared to use it. When their children ask them, what did you do about the war, they will certainly have an answer.
Alright, good. The opening sentence of the Port Huron Statement reads, "We are the people of this generation, bred in at least modest comfort, housed now in universities. Looking uncomfortable to the world we inherit." Remind us what you and your fellow students were feeling uncomfortable about.
Well, it's an expression of troubled middle class consciousness among young people feeling that the world is prepared by our parents. It isn't something that we want to settle for and is even rather scary.
Talking of scary, the statement talks about your sense that yours may be the last generation in the experiment of living. How was that fear?
Well, the fear of the world blowing up was very real. We were raised with atom bomb shelters in our backyards. This was not very hypothetical, but within 3 months of Port Huron, there was the nuclear standoff between the United States and Cuba, and it was in the air and atmosphere of terror.
At the same time, along with fear, it talks about apathy.
On campus, as student government activists, campus editors, the first thing you face as an organizer is that nobody's interested. I think that it's partly a protection against anxiety, also that this time was coming out of the 1950s of complete conformity.
Tell me about what else is happening on the outside track.
Well, a big part of the plan was to awaken a student power movement with the right to have a voice in decisions affecting their lives on campus, and the right to participate was at the center of all of this.
What was the Students for a Democratic Society?
The Students for a Democratic Society was a student activist movement in the United States. The organization developed and expanded rapidly in the mid-1960s before dissolving at its last convention in 1969. The SDS has been an important influence on student organizing and in the decades since its collapse.
What were some of the downfalls of the Student Democratic Society?
Well, some of the negative effects would be at the Kent State Massacre, where police guards shot down 4 students, which ended in them killing, and 9 people wounded, which was obviously a sad thing. And a quick question for you. So how do you feel about everything that I just said?
Well, obviously, no student should be harmed or killed by anybody that are just fighting for what they believe in.
Yeah.
Nobody
Completely
should
agree.
be killed for that. Isn't she lovely?
I zoomed in on your face.
Okay, what were the accomplishments?
Stop the video.